Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira. 2023. Adesanya couldn't escape Alex Pereira. 3 fights across 2 sports, kickboxing and MMA, and Pereira owned every one of them. Knockouts, decisions, heartbreaks. Pereira haunted Adesanya's career, so when they met again at UFC 287, nobody could ignore the pressure on Adesanya. Early on, Pereira looked like he was about to repeat history, walking Adesanya down, chopping at his legs, forcing him against the cage. The commentators could feel it, the fans felt it. The pattern was playing out again, but this time, Adesanya had a trap waiting. Late in round 2, with Pereira stalking forward confidently, Adesanya backed himself against the fence and invited the attack. Pereira launched a left hook, the same punch that had floored Adesanya before, and Adesanya answered with a right straight that cracked Pereira flush. Pereira froze just long enough for Adesanya to follow with another brutal right. Pereira dropped instantly, his head bouncing off the canvas as Adesanya stood over him, screaming in triumph. The arena erupted. Adesanya didn't just win, he closed a chapter that had followed him for years. After 3 straight losses to the same man, he flipped the rivalry in one moment. Robbie Lawler versus Rory Macdonald, 2015. When Robbie Lawler and Rory Macdonald stepped into the octagon at UFC 189, fans knew this would be violent. Nobody expected a war that would leave both men looking like they'd been through a car crash. The early rounds looked solid for Lawler, staying calm, countering clean, using experience. But by round 3, the momentum shifted. Macdonald's kicks, punches and brutal elbows had Lawler busted up and bleeding everywhere. Midway through round 4, Macdonald landed a devastating head kick that rocked Lawler badly. Macdonald smelled blood and swarmed, throwing everything at the champ, looking for the finish. Lawler staggered backward, barely hanging on, absorbing shot after shot. His lip was split wide open, but somehow he wouldn't fall. Then came round 5, and the stare down. When the 4th round ended, neither fighter sat on their stool. Instead, they stood at center cage, glaring at each other through the blood. That moment became iconic instantly. In the final round, Lawler's power finally found the mark. A stiffer left hand cracked Macdonald's already broken nose, and Macdonald collapsed immediately, cradling his face in agony. Lawler walked away as the referee waved it off. It was pure savagery. 5 rounds of punishment and one final shot that ended it all. Frankie Edgar versus Maynard, 2011. Frankie Edgar walked into UFC 125 as the lightweight champ, but carried a big asterisk. Maynard had already beaten him once, handing him his first pro loss, and Maynard wasted no time showing he still had Edgar's number. Round 1 was pure carnage. Maynard rocked Edgar early, then dropped him hard. Edgar tried to bounce back, but Maynard kept piling on. Uppercuts, hooks, stiff jabs, everything was landing. At one point, it looked like Edgar was out on his feet, swaying and staggering around the octagon. The commentators were already talking like it was over, but Edgar somehow refused to go away. By round 2, something changed. Edgar regained his rhythm, dodged Maynard's big punches, and started landing clean counters. His movement was crisp again, slipping shots, firing combinations, attacking the body, mixing takedowns. Round after round, Edgar clawed his way back into the fight. His face showed the damage, but his gas tank never emptied, classic Frankie Edgar style. By the championship rounds, Maynard looked frustrated and tired. Edgar was pushing the pace. When the final horn sounded after 5 brutal rounds, it went to the scorecards. A split draw. No winner, but no loser either. And Edgar, he kept the belt. That performance defined Edgar's career, nearly knocked out, battered, and somehow turning the tables against a bigger, stronger opponent through pure grit and pace. Fans didn't just remember the score that night, they remembered watching a champion rise from the brink and fight like a man who simply refused to quit. Matt Serra versus Georges St-Pierre, 2007. Going into UFC 69, Serra was a 10-1 underdog, fresh off winning the Ultimate Fighter comeback season, but nobody thought he belonged in the cage with Georges St-Pierre, the new golden boy of MMA. GSP was younger, faster, longer, and had just dismantled Matt Hughes for the title. This was supposed to be a routine defense, a showcase for a dominant champion. Instead, it turned into one of the greatest shocks in combat sports history. From the opening bell, Serra looked loose, maybe too loose, almost playful. But 2 minutes in, he changed the script with a wild overhand right that clipped GSP flush on the temple. GSP staggered, and the whole arena felt the shift. Serra didn't hesitate. He swarmed with punches from every angle, forcing GSP into panic mode. Another shot landed clean, and GSP went down. The welterweight king tried to scramble, but Serra was all over him, raining down punches, while St. Pierre flailed on the mat. Referee John McCarthy had no choice. Just 3:25 into the first round, it was over. The stunned look on everyone's face, from the commentators to Dana White cage side, said it all. This wasn't just an upset, it was an ambush. Serra's win is still regarded as one of the most improbable results in UFC history. Diego Corrales versus José Luis Castillo, 2005. This was a war disguised as a boxing match. When these two squared off in 2005, expectations were high, but nobody expected round 10 to go down in history. For 9 brutal rounds, these two stood toe-to-toe, throwing bombs at each other like they were allergic to defense. But by the 10th, Castillo took control. He dropped Corrales once, then twice. Corrales spit out his mouthpiece both times, not by accident, to buy precious recovery time. Veteran referee Tony Weeks caught on and docked him a point, but Corrales knew he was dangling over the cliff. Down on the cards, hurt, battered and bleeding from his swollen right eye, Corrales looked finished. The fight doctor kept glancing at him like he was one punch from ending it. But just seconds after surviving that second knockdown, Corrales came alive. With Castillo pressing to close the show, Corrales exploded. He pinned Castillo on the ropes, ripping a vicious left hook followed by a right hand that snapped Castillo's head back. Suddenly, the momentum flipped in an instant. Castillo was wobbling and gasping for air, trapped with nowhere to go. Corrales kept punching until Tony Weeks had no choice but to step in. TKO at 2:06 of round 10, a comeback that boxing fans still call the greatest round they've ever seen. Corrales didn't just survive, he walked straight through hell and emerged with his arms raised. That round 10 is why this fight remains a legend. Gritty, bloody, and absolutely unforgettable. Anderson Silva versus Chael Sonnen, 2010. By the time Anderson Silva walked into UFC 117, he was untouchable, a magician inside the cage. Chael Sonnen, just another challenger, or so everyone thought. But Sonnen didn't play by the script. From round 1, he did exactly what nobody had done to Silva, dragged him to the mat and beat him up. Punch after punch, round after round, Sonnen mauled the Spider while taunting him mid-fight. By the time round 5 started, Sonnen had landed over 200 strikes. Silva had landed about 60. The numbers told the story. Total domination. Sonnen was less than 2 minutes from one of the greatest upsets in UFC history. Then came the twist. With 150 left, Silva locked up a triangle choke from his back, a Hail Mary that turned Sonnen's dream night into a nightmare. As Sonnen struggled to breathe, Silva cranked the submission tighter, transitioning to an arm bar for good measure. The tap was inevitable. And just like that, after being battered for 23 minutes, Silva won in the blink of an eye. The MMA world couldn't believe it. Sonnen had talked more trash than anyone before a fight, and for most of the night, he backed it up. But when it mattered most, Silva reminded everyone why he was champion. Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder, 2018. By late 2018, Tyson Fury's story was already crazy. Just 3 years earlier, he was obese, battling addiction, depression, and nearly walked away from boxing for good. But here he was, in the ring with Deontay Wilder, the WBC heavyweight champion and one of the hardest punchers in boxing history. He boxed beautifully for most of the fight. Slick movement, sharp jabs, making Wilder miss badly. But in round 9, Wilder caught him clean and put him down. Fury got up and kept going, still smiling, still taunting. Then came round 12. Wilder landed a vicious right-hand left hook combination that dropped Fury flat on his back. His eyes rolled, his arms spread out. Fans thought it was over. Even Wilder started celebrating. Then, out of nowhere, Fury sat up. Like a horror movie villain who refuses to stay dead, Fury beat the count and finished the round, not just surviving, but fighting back and tagging Wilder in the final seconds. The look on Wilder's face said everything. He couldn't believe Fury was still standing, let alone throwing punches. The fight went to the scorecards. A controversial draw, but Fury had won something bigger that night. Respect, admiration, and a cult following. The Undertaker rise became a meme overnight, replayed millions of times. Mickey Ward versus Emanuel Augustus, 2001. Nobody ever accused Mickey Ward of being flashy. He was all grit, toughness, and that brutal left hook to the body. But when he stepped in against Emanuel Augustus in 2001, it turned into something else entirely. A high-speed, high-volume slugfest that pushed even Ward to the edge. For most of the fight, Augustus looked like he was putting on a show for the crowd, slipping shots, throwing wild combinations from odd angles, dancing, mugging, but it wasn't just for style points. Augustus outlanded Ward by nearly 200 punches. The numbers were ridiculous. Augustus threw more than 1,100 punches that night, averaging nearly 100 punches per round. And yet, Ward just kept walking forward. Early on, Augustus was making Ward miss and making him pay. The scorecards started leaning his way, but Ward's toughness, that granite chin and endless cardio, kicked in. He didn't just survive, he started timing Augustus's rhythm and hammering his ribs with that signature left hook to the body. By the late rounds, Augustus couldn't keep up the pace. Ward's relentless pressure and bodywork finally wore him down. In the end, he earned a unanimous decision win in a fight so wild that HBO's Jim Lampley called it the most entertaining fight I've ever broadcast. Pat Barry versus Cheek Congo, 2011. This fight barely lasted 2 minutes, but it packed more chaos than some 5-round wars. Pat Barry came into UFC Live on June 26, 2011, looking like a wrecking machine. In the opening minute, he caught Cheek Congo flush, not once, but twice. Congo staggered and collapsed, legs wobbling like he was skating on ice. Barry swarmed for the finish. The referee hovered, ready to jump in. It looked over. The crowd was screaming for a stoppage, but somehow Congo stayed alive. Barely able to stand, Congo backed up against the fence, absorbing shots. Then, out of nowhere, he uncorked a short right uppercut that caught Barry clean on the chin. Barry froze for a second, then dropped face first to the canvas. Just like that, the fight flipped on a dime. Congo didn't just survive, he scored one of the most insane comeback knockouts in UFC history at 2:39 of round 1. The arena erupted. The announcers lost their minds. Even Dana White couldn't believe what he was watching. It was pure madness. Congo was seconds away from being stopped, unconscious on his feet, and then a single punch flipped the entire fight upside down. Congo walked away with the win. Barry walked away stunned. Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 2, 2022. By round 5 of UFC 278, Kamaru Usman was cruising. He'd weathered Leon Edwards' early success and was dominating on the scorecards. Edwards looked exhausted, beaten mentally and physically. The commentary team even started framing Usman's inevitable win as part of his legacy story. 5 title defenses, pound-for-pound king. But while everyone else was writing the ending, Edwards was writing a twist. With less than a minute left and Usman comfortably ahead, Edwards faked a jab to draw a reaction, then uncorked a left high kick that landed flush on Usman's jaw. Instant impact. Usman's body stiffened as he crumpled to the mat, eyes wide but vacant. The crowd in Salt Lake City exploded. The UFC commentary booth lost its mind. The unbeatable champion had just been erased in the dying seconds of the fight. He didn't just win, he shocked the world in the most dramatic way possible. Trailing badly, running out of time, and and then pulling out one perfect strike to snatch the title. And then came the words that instantly became part of UFC folklore. Headshot, dead. That knockout flipped the narrative of Edwards' entire career. Mark Hunt versus Bigfoot Silva won 2013. When these two stepped into the octagon in Brisbane, nobody expected a masterpiece. They got a war instead. For 5 rounds, these two heavyweights threw everything they had at each other. Bombs, elbows, knees, and uppercuts. And by round 3, it looked like Hunt was done. Silva was bigger, fresher, and landing at will. Hunt's face was a mess. His right eye swelling shut, blood streaming from cuts, legs wobbling after every shot. But somehow, Hunt stayed upright, not just surviving, but swinging back. By round 4, he was landing clean hooks that made Bigfoot stumble. The crowd flipped from quiet concern to roaring disbelief. Round 5 was pure carnage. Both men moved like they were fighting underwater, exhausted, battered, but refusing to break. Hunt's looping punches connected just enough to keep Silva off balance. Silva fired back, trying to crush Hunt with knees and right hands. By the final horn, both fighters looked like they'd been in a car crash. The judges couldn't split them. Majority draw. No winner, no loser. Just 2 heavyweights who pushed their limits and left everything inside the cage. Even Dana White couldn't hide his awe that night. It was a comeback inside an entire fight. He'd looked finished halfway through and fought all the way back, matching Silva blow for blow in a heavyweight classic. Chris Weidman versus Kelvin Gastelum, 2017. By summer 2017, Weidman was in a bad place. After 3 straight losses, including 2 brutal knockouts, critics wondered if the former middleweight champ was done. And when he faced Gastelum on Long Island, things almost fell apart again. Late in round 1, Gastelum exploded with a left hook that caught Weidman clean. Weidman's legs buckled, he hit the mat, and the hometown crowd held its breath. Gastelum swarmed, looking to finish, but Weidman somehow clung on and survived to the horn. And from that point on, the fight flipped completely. Weidman's wrestling took over. He put Gastelum on his back again and again, grinding him down. In round 2, he dominated from top position, landing elbows and passing guard with ease. Gastelum looked frustrated. He couldn't get up, and he couldn't get Weidman off him. By round 3, Weidman was in full control. He secured a takedown midway through the round, transitioned to mount, and with about 30 seconds left, locked in a tight arm triangle choke. Gastelum tapped. It was over. A submission win that snapped Weidman's losing streak and reignited his career, at least for a while. The crowd erupted for their hometown fighter. The man who looked seconds from being knocked out in round 1 had not just survived, he dominated the rest of the fight. Michael Bisping versus Anderson Silva, 2016. Bisping had chased a fight with Anderson Silva for years. By 2016, Silva's dominance was fading, but his legend was intact. And Bisping, he was the perennial underdog, the scrappy Brit who never quite cracked the top tier. From the opening bell in London, Bisping fought like a possessed man. He was landing clean shots, staying busy, pressing forward, and winning rounds. But late in round 3, disaster struck. As the round closed, Bisping called for his mouthpiece after it fell out mid-exchange. Silva didn't care. He timed a brutal flying knee just as the horn sounded. Bisping collapsed backward, face a mess, blood pouring from a cut. Silva celebrated like it was over. The crowd erupted, but referee Herb Dean never waved it off. Bisping stumbled to his feet and told his corner he was fine. The doctor checked him and cleared him. Round 4 started, and Bisping kept fighting. In round 5, battered but unbroken, Bisping outworked Silva again, sticking with jabs and combinations while Silva posed, taunted, and looked for a highlight reel finish. When the final horn sounded, it wasn't even clear who had won. Then came the decision, unanimous for Bisping. Randy Couture versus Tim Sylvia, 2007. When Couture stepped into the octagon at UFC 68, he was 43 years old, coming out of retirement and moving back up to heavyweight to face Tim Sylvia, a 6'8" champion who had the reach, the youth, and the power. Almost nobody gave Couture a shot. And then Couture landed a right hand just 10 seconds into round 1 that sent Sylvia crashing to the mat. The arena exploded. Couture pounced, and from that moment, it wasn't a fight. It was a masterclass. For 5 rounds, Couture worked Sylvia over with takedowns, ground and pound, dirty boxing in the clinch, and relentless pressure. Sylvia looked frozen, tentative, completely overwhelmed. Couture was smaller, older, but absolutely fearless, sticking to him like glue, peppering him with shots, grinding him down, and making Sylvia look lost in front of his home crowd. By the final horn, the judges had no choice. 50-45 across the board for Couture. The UFC had just witnessed one of the greatest performances in heavyweight history. Forrest Griffin versus Tito Ortiz 3, 2012. Ortiz was fighting for the final time at UFC 148. His retirement bout, his last hurrah. And in round 1, he looked like a man determined to go out with a win. He dropped Griffin early with a big right hand, swarming with ground and pound, igniting the crowd. It felt like the legend might just ride into the sunset on a high note. But Griffin wasn't having it. Even after getting floored, Griffin popped back up and pushed the pace like only he could. He didn't just survive Tito's pressure, he outworked him, smothering Ortiz with volume. Kicks, jabs, combinations, constant movement. Griffin refused to slow down. Ortiz kept swinging for the fences, but Griffin was piling up points and frustrating him with relentless cardio. Round 2 and round 3 were all Griffin's pace. He absorbed some big shots along the way, but Forrest's gas tank was the difference. Ortiz looked exhausted in the final round, while Griffin still looked like he could fight another 5 rounds. When the scorecards came in, Griffin took the unanimous decision and spoiled Ortiz's retirement fight. But even in victory, Griffin kept it classic Forrest, grabbing the microphone before UFC President Dana White could and interviewing Ortiz himself inside the cage. Holly Holm versus Ronda Rousey. Going into UFC 193, Ronda Rousey was the face of the UFC. Undefeated, dominant, finishing opponents in seconds. She didn't just beat fighters, she humiliated them. Holly Holm, a decorated boxer and kickboxer, sure, but still seen as just another challenger lined up to be crushed. And for a moment in round 1, that narrative seemed accurate. Rousey charged forward aggressively, winging punches and looking to drag Holm into chaos. But Holm stayed calm, circling, sticking her jab in Rousey's face, making her miss wildly. Then, Holm started exposing Rousey's striking defense. Every time Rousey lunged forward, Holm countered cleanly. The crowd in Melbourne watched the aura fade in real time. By round 2, Holm was in complete control. Rousey looked exhausted, desperate, chasing punches and eating counter after counter. And then it happened. Holm ducked a wild right hand, pivoted, and launched a left high kick that detonated on Rousey's neck. Rousey dropped instantly, unconscious before she even hit the mat. The stadium exploded. Referee Herb Dean waved it off. That moment didn't just crown a new champion, it ended the Rousey era in a flash. So after all these insane comebacks, here's the real question. If you could freeze time and step into one of these fights at the exact turning point, right before history flipped, which moment would you choose? And why? Comment down below as you leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more amazing videos like this one.